Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce. In tonight's Tableau CRM video, we're going to be talking more about the next generation data prep platform. And because I certainly couldn't show you all these amazing things myself, Tim has once again graciously joined us, and he's going to tell us all the new hotness that we have for summer 21, different things going GA, new features coming to the platform, and just how all that stuff works. So, Tim, it's all you.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete. Thanks for having me on. Hi, folks. Tim Bezold. I'm a product manager for Tableau CRM, responsible for products on the Einstein Analytics, formerly Einstein Analytics, Tableau CRM data platform. All right, so let me share my screen. Great, so let me give you a quick update of what is new in the summer 21 release. And this is me a little bit with I suppose, a pandemic pounds on here. And before I jump in, I wanted to give you a warning. I might refer to features that are in the longer term roadmap, but I will try to call those out separately and focus mostly on what's new in the summer 21 release. Overall, in the concert of features that we're releasing, I'd like to focus on what's new in data prep, but we have a big range of new features coming out of our connectors team. We have now made generally available the Salesforce Output Connector as well as the Tableau Hyper Output Connector. We're introducing SQL as a lingua franca for Tableau CRM so that you can use SQL to query your data sets. And we're also allowing you to define a custom time zone for your dates. On the data prep side, I have some exciting smart transforms for you. So I'll be demoing time series and clustering and pivots and aggregation nodes. And we've also made data prep editing easier with versioning and undo redo capabilities in the data prep editor. So one thing before we jump into the demo, I wanted to cover is a feature that's coming in hot that I can't show you in the demo yet, but we're going to make it available as part of the summer release, is the ability to schedule event-based triggers for data flows and recipes. You may be familiar with the event-based scheduling feature that is kicking off after a data sync run completes. And it kicks off either a recipe or a data flow. So that's existing capabilities, but new in the summer release is the ability to kick off any recipe or data flow after a prior recipe completes or a prior data flow completes.
I need this thing now. I need this thing now.
I'm really excited about this, Pete, because I know you're working with a lot of customers that have complex data pipelines, and it's complicated to create these schedules, these time-based schedules, because you need to guesstimate when is this recipe going to complete, right?
Yeah, and you never know based on fluctuations of server performance. So my general rule of thumb is run it for a week. If it's always taking an hour, assume that in worst case scenario, it's going to take 2 hours. While it's not always best practice to have a data flow that creates a data set and then you edge mark it in subsequent data sets, a lot of times that actually can save you unnecessary complexities, but you want to make sure that the orchestration is right. And that, because otherwise, if data flow A feeds into data flow B, if data flow A is not finished before data flow B starts, you'll have data drift. And we want to be able to message to the end users when you log in for business at whatever time in the morning that your data is going to be refreshed, reflecting values as of X. And it's that consistency that's really killer. So anything that we can have to better control orchestration to ensure that even if there's a spike in server lag, that things aren't going to run out of order, and we can avoid data drift. That goes a huge way to helping with that. And even just getting it to fire after sync was a big win for us.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm hoping that it will really reduce the stress that you have to avoid accidental propagation of stale data, right? So if the recipe kicks in and the prior process hasn't completed, you still run that recipe, but off of stale data. So this is a way to prevent it. And notice that you can also set multiple conditions here. So it's not just one single process that you can use as an event source, but you can use multiple processes in an and condition to say if customer comparisons has completed and the accounts data set has been updated. So it also integrates with the external data API. Awesome. So, and then another feature that's currently not GA, but it is released as a pilot for the summer release is the ability for recipes to access Salesforce objects directly. So this is the input node of Data Prep Editor, and you'll have data sets, connected objects, and now a new third option, which is directly accessing Salesforce data. Also something that we're still working on that I can't necessarily show you a demo of. But then on the output connector side, we are making our Tableau output connector GA and the Salesforce output connector. And that's pretty much where I want to switch over to the demo in Data Manager. So we have our connect page here. Let me maybe zoom in a little bit. And we have multiple connections defined. They can be on different schedules. So if you have a few objects that you need to replicate very frequently, you can set a dedicated schedule for that. That's an existing feature, but I'd like to call it out because not a lot of people know about it. You do this by creating a new Salesforce connector to your local org. And then you can move objects between these connections. On the connection setup here, this is the admin interface for setting up live connections, setting up output connections. As I mentioned, we have the S3 output connector, Snowflake output connector, and now GA is the Salesforce output connector for writing back to Salesforce objects, standard objects, custom objects, where support insert, update, delete or upsert of Salesforce data. We don't delete these records. Actually, so it's just insert, upsert, and operations. And yeah, I think that's it. And then for the Tableau side, we generate in Tableau hyperfile in your Tableau online environment using data that was processed in a data prep recipes. So these output connections are exclusive to data prep. And this is our data manager and a bunch of recipes in here. And I'd like to walk you through a couple of those recipes and kind of give you an overview of what is new for Data Prep Editor in this summer release. So in here, we have a input node. And Pete, maybe at this point, did you have a chance to kind of create a couple of recipes and work with Data Prep? What are some of the things that you observed?
I've played around in spring 21. I wanted to be surprised, so I haven't done anything in my GS0 summer 21 environment yet. But I did notice, candidly, this preview can get a little laggy.
Right, correct, especially with wide fields, right? So if you go into your object and you use the favorite button of the select all, and it just creates a very wide data set and you have multiple inputs. One enhancement that we've done to make the preview of very wide data sets less laggy is that we're automatically adding only the first 100 fields into the preview, and all additional fields are added as hidden fields. So in this case, I only have 28 fields, but I can go in and manually hide fields from preview here. And basically what this will help me if I have fields that are passive that I won't actively use in transformations, I can just pass them through and propagate them to my output without incurring this lagginess of generating the preview for them. And I can still refer to those fields and formulas, and we automatically add them back in. But I won't be able to use the column preview or the column profile for those fields. I can only use the column profile for fields that are in preview. One enhancement that we've done is actually an undo redo button. So adding those fields into the preview, I can undo that and add it back in and actually view those preview for those fields. Awesome. So I think that is kind of one thing addressing the lagginess of wide fields. We've also made, Pete, some progress on serving the preview in steps. So if you notice, sometimes if I click on a new node, let's say all the way here in the more in the end, you might notice a two-step process where we show the metadata of those fields first, and then exactly this step here, and then the preview is loaded in. So that is kind of a two-step process. You see which columns are used, you can interact with the tool, it doesn't freeze up, and then the preview shows up.
I kind of wish we had that for dashboard editor, because like sometimes I'll hop into a dev org that I don't use very often, and I'll try to open up the sales analytics dashboard, and I'll be like, oh wait, that's right, I haven't logged into this org in 3 months, and then I have to wait for the load spinner to tell me no, the dashboard's not going to work. And I kind of wish I could just like X out of it real quick and like go do something else and grab a fresher data set or something. And the fact that like your loads are independent and kind of spread out, like I don't have to sit around and wait for the part of the screen that I may not actually need in order to interact with the part that I do need. Because like what right here, great example. If all you want to do is change that display label, you don't have to wait for the preview. It's not relevant.
Right.
So I really like that.
And you notice that I've neatly annotated some of those nodes here. That's something that I've observed when I build some flows is really useful to get to collaborate with others and to keep track of what's actually happening in this recipe. We've also focused on graph enhancements, and I think this is where some of the data flow folks like you are, Pete, are hopefully going to be happy about. We had a limitation when it came to graph interactions in the past. So notice how I can actually drag the plus. In the past, we weren't able to drag the plus to elsewhere, for example, to back to my opportunity load node. So let's say I have a scenario here where maybe I've aggregated my opportunities, or I have changed the grain, and I want to join back all of the opportunity that were in the opportunities that were in my input node. I want to join them back in at this point in my graph. I can now do this by dragging the plus over, add the join in, and now you see I've basically created 2 output graphs coming out of this input node, and created this new join node to bring that in.
Is the base behavior, and if I was just to guess based on what seems intuitive, I would assume that that load opportunity is now the base grain, and that's why it's stored first. So you drag the right onto the left, and if you do it backwards, you just have to undo it. Like, is there any, like, I guess what's the oops process?
Yeah, so I think we don't have, so you can't actually toggle the input. We implicitly, the base grain is what we're starting with here. I think the good news is that you can use joins. You could use a right outer join to say, no, wait, the other side is actually my base grain.
Okay, but yeah, but then just to clarify, it's not based on the node types. It's because you drag second rank pass to load opportunity. Therefore, load opportunity is your base grain, and you're enriching it with second rank pass, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just need
implicit.
I need to put that into my muscle memory.
Yeah, that's the implicit behavior. And I can apply this here. We automatically picked opportunity. And what you need to do is basically pick the fields you actually want to bring in from that. And you can unselect those fields. Obviously, the oops moment here is I can actually go back to my prior state using undo to restore my output data set, because I want to show you a second trick here. If you have an existing output graph, we've had the add branch option here, and I can create a new output node here. For example, I can write to a data set, but I can write the same data, not just to a data set, I can also write it to my Snowflake data lake, for example, and then I need to pick a table in my Snowflake environment, and I'm not going to go through the whole mapping here. But it found one ID, so I'm going to actually just accept it and remove that before I run the flow. Essentially, I can have multiple branches go out. But now what's new in the summer release, I can also actually drag this branch button, just like the plus button, and reconnect back to the same operation. So what we've done now is the same operation as with the plus that was also not possible previously with the prior graph interactions in the spring release, and now with the summer release, we allow you to drag this branch button anywhere to create connections to any other node in your graph.
So I don't know if there's as much of a need to do this as there was in data flows with aggregate nodes, but are you able to do a self join where a given node is both the left and right source?
So let me discard this. So you basically are asking, can I actually create a self join? So if
Yeah, and again, I'm reasonably sure that most of the use cases that I do this in are going to be covered in the aggregate function. Like I would say, I would create a composite key. Let's say I have transactions that happen every day, and I want every transaction for a specific account to know how many transactions there were that month. I would use a concatenation of account ID, year, month, and roll the data set up onto itself. So again, that use case is totally covered in aggregates. I can't really think any of off the top of my head that node wouldn't cover. But I guess if I find any, I'll let you know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, one thing is, as you can always create like an empty transform node and then drag it back to the prior node. I think, so this is going to be optimized out when you actually run this recipe. So that's always a pattern that we've employed earlier before we had the drag of the branching button. Just create a dummy and then refer back to yourself.
That is a pretty nifty workaround. But yeah, currently I think everything I need to dig through some of my old stuff, but I can't think of any use cases off the top of my head that would not be solved by the aggregate transformation.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think we covered this last time. What I'm doing here is I am using some window functions that now have been available since the spring release. So in this case, I'm just creating a rank of opportunities by account. So my partitioning is on the account field, and then in this one here, I wanted to actually call out a new string function that is available. It is called this one here, and it returns basically it's the equivalent of the index off function in data flows. So basically, what I'm doing here is I'm looking for characters, and I'm excluding in the name field, and I'm excluding the first characters, the first 15, which is opportunity 4, and then I'm searching, in that scope.
Nice. So this was something that I was that was a big one for me, and the reason why is because this function allows you to parse a delimited string. And there are a lot of very, very important use cases that cannot be addressed without this. So this is one that makes me feel a lot better.
Awesome. Yeah, that is covered in our release notes, which are here. So we're adding this instruction function. We're also adding a rolling sum function that allows you to create a rolling sum, or in this case, for example, sales quantity in a window function. Awesome. So should we take a look at what is new for the smart transforms?
Definitely. These are some really killer things that go far beyond. It's not just about parity. It's about where are we going next. And this is stuff that blows data flows right out of the water.
So as we are re-platforming with the recipes product, it runs on a next generation platform. We have the ability to include machine learning transformations because we're running on Spark. And in this case, I have my favorite avocado data set is actual data from that I think I got from Kaggle. And it just has purchase or sales data for avocado products. And these are by different regions. So let's say I have a couple stores in those regions and I would like to forecast the sales data into the future. So this is basically existing sales data that I have. So and then the number of total bags by different stores. And what I can do is I can aggregate by region and then make a prediction of for that specific region. For that, I'll need the aggregate node. And I'm going to summarize the number of total bags. I'm going to group by the date. So I'm going to create I'm going to group by year, month, dates. And then I'm going to create a pivot for regions that I'm interested in. So let's say I have stores in Atlanta and Houston. And then for those regions, I can kind of create the total sum of sales in these two regions. So that's basically the ability to pivot out, and I can add on additional regions here. So I can basically project just pivot this out into columns. Once I've done that, I take the transform node and use the time series forecasting function, which you may be familiar with from our query engine. It has been available on a query engine for a while. And it is exactly the same algorithm that we're using. It's a Holt-Winters function, giving you pretty much the exact same results as you get doing the interactive query experience. Except here, we're writing it to the data set and we're persisting it as part of your data set. So you don't have to perform these calculations in real time if you were to, or you want to use those as part of Einstein discovery story or something. That's when persisting this data is actually really convenient. And I'm going to actually drop the original calculations because this is what we're going to predict. Currently, those are empty in the preview, but once we run this, they're actually going to be filled. And that then goes into an output data set forecast. So that's my avocado sales forecast. And then save and run this. And by the way, one feature that I didn't call out earlier that I think is pretty exciting, I can go in and actually make some modifications here. For example, always give my nodes proper names. This is predict sales. And this is going to actually aggregate and pivot. So once I've made these changes to my recipe, I hit save. And guess what? I can bring up version history. So in this version history, I can add a description that I added no descriptions to this version. I can inspect a prior version and see how these versions differ without losing any work or without having to commit to this being the current version. So I can basically always go back here, and on more complex recipes like this one, you notice that we keep a trail of the versions here. So I can see the work that I've done on Monday. I can compare that to the current version of how the flow looked like when I was building it, and I had like these snapshots. So hopefully this gives you more confidence and just peace of mind when you're building recipes.
Yeah, especially when other people are allowed to touch your recipes.
Exactly.
Things somehow, hey, suddenly I'm getting all these error emails. I wonder what could possibly be going on with it I haven't touched.
Yes, so you will be called out by name, on who has made changes to that, and it's at least and you can go back, to 20 prior versions. So you hopefully don't lose any work there.
Nice.
And then finally, a pre-built recipe on clustering, kind of the final smart transforms that I want to walk you through that is going GA in this release, is the ability to create clusters. So in this case, we would like to analyze opportunities and account clusters or opportunity clusters. And we're doing the same operation here. So we basically project out opportunity amounts by the lead source channel. So we're kind of trying to understand what are the different lead sources, how much yield do they actually produce on our opportunities, and then let the system automatically match these opportunities or set these opportunities into these clusters. So this is kind of what we're doing. We're projecting a dummy value here. It's not the actual value until you run the recipe. We're not yet fully calculating the actual clusters based on the preview, but it gives you something to start with. And then you look at this in Explorer and you create your dashboard for your clusters. And you actually, what I built earlier, on the prediction side for my avocado forecasts, this is kind of what the function predicts for you. Same as for the clusters, I can build a scatter plot that actually produces dots on the map for each of those clusters as we're identifying white space, for example, for other opportunities or other products to be sold using clustering. So yeah, pretty excited to launch this and put this in your hands with the summer release. And I believe that pretty much covers the things that I wanted to walk you through today.
All right, so classic Pete fashion. I'm going to ask about a couple of things that I'd like to see in the future and just hear your thoughts on do you think it's feasible? So I have never, I'm not a big SQL guy, but I immediately, as soon as you were showing that index of function, I was Googling what is this called, because I'm like, what is this called? And it makes me wonder, does this mean it's now open season on peppering the idea exchange with SQL or SQL-like features that we want to see in data flows in SAQL?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the peppering will commence. The next one.
Oh, sorry. I mean, yes, I think. Yeah. So we have this push towards SQL, and definitely what the query engine is also going beta with an SQL capability against data sets. So you can actually continue to leverage the syntax, that you're using in Explorer against data sets.
But can you can't really mix and you can't mix and match though. We
don't have full parity on the functions yet, especially those SAQL functions that were available. Mm-hmm. But the ambition is definitely there, that we allow you to mix and match the syntax that you're using in data platform on the SQL queries against data sets as well.
And then another thought would be common use case. I'm just trying to clean up my data flows, clean up my data sets, get rid of stuff I'm not using, except, oh, it turns out I am using it. So what about a feature that would allow us to see from a output node, we could look through the different list of fields and determine where they are being used so that we can clean up our data sets without breaking a dashboard in someone's private folder or there's just too many different teams using this data set. And we have super users, evangelists, they build their own stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great feature request and something that we're tracking that is on our roadmap. I believe the impact, and especially when you look back at this new feature of data event-based triggers and these data pipelines, when one recipe delivers certain fields, what is the impact if I remove a field from that recipe? Are there downstream recipes? Are there downstream dashboards? It's definitely something that we are looking to improve on in the future.
Mm-hmm. And then
make that easier.
The last thing I'm going to ask for, and this is by far probably the gentlest, I observe that, and this is just drawing a parallel to core Salesforce flows, Lightning Flow Builder, Visual Workflow, whatever you want to call it. Best practice is always to comment your nodes, let people know what you're doing. And in data flows, we didn't have this for the longest time, unless we did it in the JSON, and no one's going to find that comment. But I never think that the juicy piece of information that's going to help me understand the technical debt that I've inherited is going to be hidden in a comment of a node, because, well, maybe you really only need to comment 1 out of 10 nodes that's doing something fancy. So I, as the successor, I'm never going to go and look for it. So what about just a little comment icon like we have in various collaboration tools, that when you comment on a specific element of something, you just have that little bubble off to the side that says this item has been commented on?
Yes, so when you add a description, you have a little comment bubble that indicates that the description is there.
Oh, it's visible. So it's visible from the canvas.
Yes.
I did not see that. So hey, that's a really rapid turnaround. I asked for it and it's already there.
It's already there. And yeah, I think you mentioned earlier, Pete, with all of the data flows that you're seeing that are out there in the wild, we are definitely continue to work on an upgrade framework for that. So we want our customers to be able to seamlessly upgrade their data flows into the next-gen data prep editor. We have been pretty busy at closing the parity gaps. We're pretty much there. We're still working on custom fiscal calendar offsets for field levels. That is one gap that we're filling, hopefully, for the winter release. And that is not going to stop us, though, to start offering a pilot, hopefully, for the winter release for data flow upgrades, so that you can, if there's a data flow that qualifies, that doesn't have any incompatible nodes or syntax, things that we're still working on to bring to parity, you'll be able to take those data flows and convert them, or create a copy of those as a recipe and try it out.
Yeah, because that's a pretty scary prospect. Not only like if you did not build a data flow and you just you add fields to it here and there, but you're not a data flow developer. Maybe a partner built that data flow, and then you're suddenly told, well, it needs to be converted to a recipe. Have fun, or even like, let's say that you did build that 300 node monster. Now you have to fix it, even if you do know how. That's a little daunting. And knowing that there's a drive to parity and that there's a path to conversion, I think is really, really important. And I'm glad to see that that's at the forefront of thought, and that data flows aren't going anywhere until they can go somewhere without everything breaking.
Exactly, yeah. So we still have a lot of areas in our product that are currently leading into data flows, namely many of our app templates and dataset builder, there's still generate data flows. So those are still domain parity items that we're working with to lead into recipes. But the other thing that I wanted to say is we're also very focused on performance right now for data prep recipes, to make sure that they consistently run faster than the equivalent data flow. We're not always there, especially with recipes that have lots of data but only little transformations. The nuance there, if you are in a position to decide, should I develop something in a data flow or should I develop something in a recipe, is obviously recipes have a richer set of transformations. They have the smart transforms, you have aggregations and joins, etc. So if you require that, your decision is almost kind of made. But if you don't require that, and you only, it depends on how much work you need to do. If it's like a very complex recipe or a complex data flow with lots of transformations, you might actually see better performance in a recipe. If it's just, a couple of quick aggregate, a couple of quick lookup operations or augment operations, and maybe a filter, then probably in almost all of the time, the data flow is going to run faster, because currently the architecture is tilted towards data sets and data flows. And we're still hard at work at making sure that our next gen data platform is sitting at the foundation of our architecture as well, to make sure that end-to-end performance is there.
I would say the most common use case I have for a teensy data flow is B2B marketing analytics. They want to clean up those Pardot data sets. Offset to a user time. I have one client that really wanted insights into does the send time, does the hour of the send make a difference? And we wanted to, offset to their time zone so that it would make sense. And so it was a teensy little data flow, or filtering out internal emails and tests and stuff that just weren't tagged properly. So anybody who's got B2B MA, they probably have a little teensy cleaner data flow, or they should. Yeah. I recommend it.
Exactly. And that's an area where we're currently not competitive in terms of performance.
Well, those ones are always quick anyway, so I'm not worried.
That's true. Yeah, if it may be 30% slower, but if that's just a minute,
But when we're talking about
the end of the world,
the 3-hour behemoths that are joining lots of different external data, complex transformations, composite keys, a billion computed fields, this is where recipe is going to outperform.
Yes, because of the new platform, it can actually separate the work into parallel work streams and the Spark backend, so that if the compute portion is very intense, we can split out the work in a recipe behind the scenes into using 10 machines at a time. So that means the compute portion can be sped up 10x, but we're actually incurring overhead of actually moving the data into this environment and moving it back. So that's where we lose time again. So that's where these trade-offs come in. And it needs to be a significant portion for the 10x speed improvement during the compute can actually catch up with the overhead that we are currently incurring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. It's always going to be kind of a balancing act until it's had just more time for rubber to hit the road and figure out where the sweet spots are. It's like, it reminds me how every release for a number of years, when I would talk to people on the product team, the question I was always being asked was, why are you still using SACWL? What are the use cases that you're trying to identify? Mm-hmm. And there's a cognizance of what creates bottlenecks from a development perspective, what creates bottlenecks from a processing perspective, and give it time. Like I'm patient. First release, something doesn't have to be perfect for me, but right. The preview capability and just the separating out of the load spinner stuff. I think that's all part of the same theme of gradually figuring out where are the bottlenecks and wiping them out.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we're getting there. So we're pretty excited that we're really starting to see the adoption. We're starting to see a huge ramp up across the board for this new editor and for this new backend, and can't wait to show more results next time.
All right, awesome. Well, I believe that's all we have for tonight. So Tim, thank you again for joining us, and to those of you at home. Yeah, definitely. You're always welcome back for new releases, or if you just got some cool stuff to show. I'm certainly not going to say, no, it's not April, October, or August.
Mid-release update,
December, April, December, and August. But yeah, so to those of you at home, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, and as always, thanks for watching.